All right, welcome everyone. We are going to get started on time. Hope y'all are having a good day. Why doesn't someone give me a thumbs up as a reaction if you can hear me? We'll do a sound check. All right, audio's working. Um, we're going to dive on in. Today's webinar is straightforward. We're going to cover 5 key considerations when selecting a battery energy storage system. This is a simple presentation where we're focusing on high level values. It's actually the start of our installer certificate path training. We've done a lot of live webinars as of late. We've collected the recordings of these live webinars in our on-demand training portal, which right now is really just a repository of these webinars. But if you want a head start on our certificate paths, you can head on over to training.solark.com, click on our certificate pathways. This program is the first presentation in our residential installer training pathway, which is the starting point of our on-demand program. We have other programs for residential designer, which is more lecture oriented. It has a lot of NABCEP registered classes. We also have classes for commercial installer and commercial designer. So I'd say start with the residential installer training for you and your team. You just go to the Sol-Ark website, under resources, find the training page, get there that way. The installer training certificate path focuses on the 15K. It covers design, installation, commissioning, monitoring, and support, as well as some advanced configurations. There's also a class dedicated to the 12K where we continue to mill value from that product launched way back in 2019, still on the market, as well as some electric code classes. To ruin the surprise of the presentation, here are our key values. We're going to talk about maximum backup power, having robust and proven hardware, what it means to be an experienced company in this market, some comments about Sol-Ark's flexible architecture, and our industry partnerships. So these items are very important when it comes to whole home backup systems. Aside from bells and whistles, this is what cuts to the core of the value of what it means to deliver reliable backup power with residential focus, but these arguments certainly apply to commercial as well. And then there should be time for Q&A. Now, Dan is talking about volume. You cannot hear me. Is anyone else coming into that? I see my headset switched on, so I'm not sure. Dan, it might be on your end. If anyone else is having trouble hearing, let me know, and I can. Richard says it's loud and clear. So, Dan, you might need to refresh your web page if you're having any kind of video or audio issue. So first, we're going to talk about maximum backup power. The Sol-Ark 15K is the largest single unit whole home backup inverter in the US market. And size does matter in this case. Uh, you want a simple job site, so installing one big thing is always going to go faster and be easier than a whole bunch of small things that have to be networked together. Budget is a consideration. Customers don't want to spend too little and not have enough, but there's In most cases, you are budget constrained and you need to get the most bang for your buck. And the fact is, you look at Sol-Ark's 15K inverter and you go look at whole home backup generators, and they're in the 20 kilowatt, 22 kilowatt range. So if you go smaller than a Sol-Ark 15K, you're really off the mark when it comes to whole home backup. Um, there's more to it than that. The internal components inside the Sol-Ark, such as that 200 amp uh, grid pass through, it's a 180 amp grid pass through. It's for 200 amp service. 200 amp panels, do not exceed 200 amps. If they do, they'd be tripping their breaker. If you're on the edge or you need to go even larger than that to 400 amps, you could just use two Sol-Ark inverters. Uh, but those high amperage relays and contactors actually do matter. When you look at, say, a 50 amp relay versus a 180 amp component, if there is ever any issue in switching between grid and off grid, it's that relay that's going to take the hit. And the bigger the relay, the larger the hit it can take. And so, to address concerns about, well, do I need a manual bypass to manual bypass the system in case the inverter goes down? Well, fundamentally, you're going to be more secure with a larger relay than a smaller relay. Whole home backup, we are interested in delivering enough power to run heavy duty air conditioner units, basement water pumps, um, items like that require a tremendous amount of surge capability, and surge capability can be useful to know in terms of seconds. It also has greater surge capability if you're measuring in milliseconds, like a 1/100th of a second. There's even greater capability. But all of that matters when you want to run your equipment reliably. Customers do not understand the energy requirements of their devices. Bigger is always going to be better in this circumstance. Last but not least, our hardware includes an additional port. We'll talk more on that to come, but the fact of the matter is you can actually augment power with Sol-Ark. If you combine a generator and a Sol-Ark unit, you can get even more power to the home and to the system that way. So very much focused on providing reliable and quality whole home backup power rather than something smaller that may be all right for economics, but does not hit that goal of will it produce power during a blackout. Um, it sounds like a simple question, but then when you understand that your average customer does not know anything about electricity, they're not going to manage their electricity during that blackout. Trying to run whole home backup with a smaller inverter simply does not work out well. So Sol-Ark packs that all into a single box. All of our competition, Enphase, Tesla, Franklin, because of their smaller form factors, you end up having to install multiple battery units to get to the same amount of backup power as a Sol-Ark. And that means those components need to be combined together. So that's additional work to do. That is another, sometimes the industry calls it an energy service panel. Sometimes it's called a combiner panel. Sometimes it's called a microgrid interconnect device. All of that functionality, a giant battery charger, grid controls, being able to DC couple solar directly onto the Sol-Ark, all of that is built into our all-in-one unit. And that what that means is that by the time it is installation day, you can put the Sol-Ark on the wall, wire the grid connection up to it, wire the home service panel up to it, wire a generator or an EV charger up to it, wire your choice of batteries up to it, and that is the extent of the project. It can be more complicated than that. You can do AC coupled solar along with DC coupled solar, but you don't have to. Most of our installations are single unit inverter installations with solar landed directly onto it. So again, as far as just rolling up the site, putting one box on the wall, Sol-Ark will give you the most backup power. It will give you the largest solar option. Some of our imitators have said that they can do more solar than we can. Well, when you look at the number of solar ports, you look at the amperage of our full-sized MPPTs. We don't do this irregularly sized stuff where one MPPT is larger than all the rest, and you have to remember to wire it correctly and all that. No, it's all of our MPPTs are the same size. They can accommodate multiple solar circuits. We have ports for 6 solar circuits. That can accommodate that makes it the easiest possible to get to a very large array using mainstream value range modules, not just the brand new ultra efficient modules that may not even be available yet. The largest battery charger at 275 amps that can actually get a little bit more than 12K out of the battery. We are a conservatively spec'd system. We want you to use the full amount of power from the very top of the battery range to the very bottom of the battery range so that you can consistently get the rated power out of the unit regardless of the battery state of charge, particularly with lithium batteries. We have 2 battery ports, and that means, for battery systems, even up to 30 or 40 kilowatt hours, you can just land them onto the inverter without the use of additional combiners. Um, our battery partners, the vast majority of them, the ones you'll see in this presentation, are UL 9540 rated. We include all the grid options, the grid connection, the grid disconnection, the grid controller, whether that be demand or time of day, multi-season included in the box. That can be programmed on the LCD touchscreen. It can be programmed remotely through our monitoring portal, depending on which is your preference. You know, some sites the internet's not installed, and that's not going to impede you getting through a Sol-Ark project. Other sites, they'd rather have the installer just put it on the wall, connect to online monitoring, and let the home office team figure out the rest of the settings. Sol-Ark is set up for that too. Virtual power plant incentives, we have experience with that. We are involved with the Connected Solutions program on the East Coast, doing distributed energy resource management. More on that to come. That GEN port on the 15K can take an EV charger, can take AC coupled solar, can be used as a sheddable additional sub panel. So that will give you intelligent state of charge load shedding for any sub panel. Bring your own. It is capable of auto starting a generator. It is capable of stacking to 400 amp service or even larger. We do have residential compounds of 800 amp service or even more. Sol-Ark can do all of that. So that is why it is the Swiss Army knife of inverters. Whatever you don't pick up on your design, you get to the field, it's not going to ruin your project. There is a way to expand the capability of a Sol-Ark to accompany or to accommodate your site challenges. So when you look at what it takes to do large whole home backup in a easy and simple manner, the smaller competition, simply becomes more complicated. There's less stuff to connect for whole home backup when it comes to a Sol-Ark unit. For 400 amp service, what I would strongly look into is a 400 amp disconnect going to two Sol-Arks. You may want to do a fuse combiner block um, before then. You could also do two 200 amp disconnects and then combine those disconnects at the meter. So a little bit of design flexibility there. The Sol-Ark 12K is an earlier Sol-Ark model. It is now our smaller Sol-Ark model, and we would say it is an entry point to backup power. You get smaller than that, and you start getting into non-backup systems, which we don't really have a suitable shovel-ready product for that. It's not really our area of focus. I've installed solar for over a decade before working in manufacturing, and I know the number one question the customers have is, will this produce power during a blackout? There are solar battery systems on the market that do not produce power during a blackout. The Sol-Ark will get you there. Now, why would you go with the 12K instead of spending a little bit more to go with the 15K? Well, the first answer is most customers go with the 15K. However, the 12K does have some advantages. First, it includes all of the breakers. So it has a solar grid generator and battery breaker, whereas the 15K you have to bring your external grid disconnect and your generator disconnect. You might as well do it if you can only do a load side connection. I mean, the 15K is listed for a load side connection. We cover that in our more advanced class, more advanced training. Um, but the Sol-Ark 12K, if you just need a little bit of backup power, if economics are the priority, you say, well, I know economics are the priority, but when the power goes out, you're going to want to access some 120, 240 power to run, mini splits, water pumps, water heaters. The 12K can do all that very quickly. Um, David, on your 400 amp service question, I would actually combine the two Sol-Arks together and even look into a 400 amp main lug only panel, do the whole house on a 400 amp panel rather than two 200 amp panels. Now, two 200 amp panels is common, and you can do that with a Sol-Ark, but the advantage of combining the systems together rather than separating the systems together, and you could keep the two 200 amp panels and put in a combiner, or you can feed the panels individually. The advantage of combining the system is you get the full capability of the full power rating of the Sol-Ark with both. There's a cumulative effect for combining your services. So rather than constrain yourself to two 15 kilowatt systems, you'd have a single 30 kilowatt system. So that is a common selling point for Sol-Ark under that premise of most backup power. When you get into these energy combiner structures of our competitor systems, they're not always well suited for 400 amp service or beyond. They might only be able to do 200 amp service, where we can continue and go on and up. No, but you can absolutely stack the inverters up in a master slave situation to do instead of a 200 amp pass through to do a 400 amp pass through, instead of feeding 200 amp panels to feed 400 amp panels. and on up and up. The maximum would be 1800 amps with 10 of them. Sol-Ark has off-grid experience. That was kind of our starting point, was figuring out how to make off-grid systems more simple and accessible to both installers and homeowners. Things like stackability and scalability and um, integrated generator controls, that comes out of our off-grid origins. And what that means is we are very focused on what it takes to provide quality backup power. Um, primarily non-backup system, a small system that is only focused on rate reduction. They are not going to be as in tune with what happens when the grid isn't there with their products as Sol-Ark is, because of our vast number of off-grid customers. And that's what the customers who spend this much money on large solar ESSs at least want to dream about, if not live, is taking their whole house off grid. Even if it remains pragmatic to stay grid tied, they want to know that if they had to, they could. And we have customers living off grid with our transformerless hybrid architecture. So Sol-Ark has more transformerless hybrid inverter architecture than anyone else in the market, and it seems like transformerless hybrid inverters are taking over. So, 10 years ago, it was all about transformer-based inverters, separating out the solar inverter from the battery inverter. But now we see uh, the competition either directly copying our form factor uh, or coming up with their uh, responses to it. So one notable example would be the Tesla Powerwall 3, which has followed Sol-Ark into this hybrid inverter architecture. Uh, and to us, that kind of validates where we've been here all along. Um, and we're excited to see more support in the industry for hybrid inverters and design software and items like that, because we've always known it is the right design platform for building residential systems and small to mid-sized commercial. Uh, Over 50,000 systems deployed with very low failure rate, uh, field serviceable product, field serviceable parts. All of our spare parts inventory, as well as our technical support, is run out of our headquarters just north of Dallas. More on that later. The point is, you're not being a guinea pig with a Sol-Ark product. Uh, there are more and more hybrid inverter models coming to the market every day. They do not have any field experience. When you look at a Sol-Ark, when you look at our 15K, it's very obvious that it's a expansion of our 12K. Our 12K was a refinement of our 8K. We're not taking a product model and throwing it in the bin and looking around for the next latest and greatest thing. We are building off of our rugged and proven architecture going back to 2018. And so, the most popular system in our network is the Sol-Ark 15K for whole home backup power. One Sol-Ark 15K can manage air conditioner units of, it can run 4-ton air conditioner units, but the longer the air conditioner unit ages, the dirtier its power quality becomes. So you can confidently run 3.5 ton air conditioner units with 4 ton air conditioner units. Typically, that's when you start to look at two inverter systems. Mini splits, no problem. Hot water tanks, no problem. Well pumps, no problem. Uh, with a little bit of a sanity check. If it's the deepest well your contractor has ever installed, you're probably going to have to go with two Sol-Arks rather than one. If it's a sump pump in your basement, no problem. So our product line has grown. We have inverters for the Latin America market, as well as inverters for the U.S. We have inverters for every single kind of electric service in the U.S. Not quite, all the major ones: residential 120, 240, commercial 208 volt Y, um, commercial 480 volt Delta or Y configuration are compatible. If you are doing, say, 240, 308, you'll have to use a transformer. Um, but your most popular, at the very least, your most popular product, electrical services in the U.S., residential and commercial, we have products for. Commercial, we also have batteries. We talked about that more in our commercial classes. A little bit about this at the end. Now we're talking about whole home experience. Um, Different modes of operating. So some homes need zero export. Other homes, want to sell back to the grid with net metering. Other homes need time of day metering. Other homes don't want to sell back to the grid, but they want to ignore time of day metering only during certain hours of the year when they do want to sell back to the grid. Sol-Ark can do all of that. It has a very straightforward controller of when to sell back to the grid and when to charge the battery. Um, the installer may need to understand that controller. What I say about the controller is that it is far easier than what came before it, and anything that came after it uh, may be more simple, but isn't as versatile. So you have to kind of have a middle ground. Otherwise, you start to not understand how the system operates. And if you have no control over how the system operates, if the manufacturer locks you behind kind of marketing buzzwords for uh, you are in savings mode or you are in energy mode, it may not actually fit the right rate structure for you, so it may simply not work with your rate structure. And then B, the imagination of the customer on how the system should work may exceed reality. Just look online. There are tons of disgruntled customers out there, not necessarily because the systems don't behave how they want, but or how they should, but because the customer doesn't understand the the impact of selecting, say, a storm mode, and then the storm rolls in, the system stops selling back to the grid, and it ends up costing them money rather than saving them money. So that's our competition has kind of gone a little bit too far in terms of simplicity. What I like about the Sol-Ark is if a customer has a question, either through one or two taps on the LCD screen, which is on site, handled through a cell phone camera message, or by pulling up the online monitoring system, you can reference a specific setting and say, this is why your battery is charging. This is why your system is selling back to the grid. If you check this other box, it'll change the behavior. But it is a very straightforward and defined manner that a technician would like to see. So maybe a little bit more elbow grease for a little bit more functionality. Um, Sol-Ark strikes the balance between lowering the electric bill and providing whole home backup power. When you ask customers what they want about solar, they'll say we want to get our money back. Over the life of the system, over the warranty. Um, but I can tell you, most customers, when they're buying large whole home backup ESSs, what they really want is not necessarily a year 7.9 versus year 8.6 payback. They're not crunching the numbers like an accountant would for a commercial project. What the customers actually want is the lowest possible electric bill and reliable backup power. And the Sol-Ark platform delivers both of those items, not just one. So it sets up the customer for long-term success and satisfaction. We primarily utilize a DC to DC architecture. That's with DC coupled solar and DC coupled batteries. Yes, we are capable of accommodating AC coupling, but for reasons that we talk about in our training program, DC coupling is more elegant. It's more integrated. It's more controllable. It removes the um, control scheme that's required for AC coupling with frequency shifting, which can be problematic when you add in other items such as generators or electric vehicles. So by prioritizing a DC to DC architecture, we keep your design versatility there. We improve the system efficiency. Basically, keep it simple. Last but not least, we know that customers want seamless transfer. So when the power goes out, they don't want to wait a minute for the power to go out before the home boots back up again. Uh, Sol-Ark is particularly experienced in seamless transfer, UPS grade seamless transfer, which means the power could go out and the customer may not even notice. They do not need to reset their clocks. Their air conditioners don't chirp and beep in an annoying manner. Uh, that seamless transfer is what customers expect in a whole home backup system, and we deliver that. Brian, you have a question. Does Sol-Ark have a cell phone dongle? We have commercial customers that cannot have any outside device on their network. Um, right now, it's more of a bring your own cell phone or bring your own Wi-Fi. Um, if that's the case, I can say Sol-Ark. We are installed on banks. We are installed in secure areas. We honor the warranty even without an internet connection. So that mobile connection does not have to be uh, always in service for us to honor our warranty. So we have a tremendous amount of not internet connected backup systems too. And if that's not the MO for the customer, then those companies who are not used to backing up non-interconnected systems have trouble supporting those customers. Whereas we roll up our sleeves and can diagnose systems even without an internet connection. Here's our headquarters, and coming back to that whole home experience. When you need support, that is not the time to kick the tires of the manufacturer that you're buying your product from. The time to do that is before the purchase. You can visit our headquarters. We are located just north of Dallas, Texas, out of Allen, Texas. It's a 500-person office building. We're not quite that big yet, but we have dozens of support team members based out of our Texas headquarters. And we support multiple time zones. We have 7 day a week support. Uh, we take support seriously, and we try to solve support with people more than expecting the installer to support the customer, expecting the customer to figure it out based on documentation and manuals. Um, we it's not to say that support issues aren't stressful, um, but fundamentally we are present in the U.S. to resolve your support issues and get them taken care of. Our especially our lower priced competition, Google their headquarters, see where they're based, and then ask yourself, are they going to be here when things go wrong? Pull them up on Google Maps, come on by and take a tour of our facility. Looking at our history, we were founded in 2013, primarily focused on off-grid, smaller applications. The 8K was our first grid-tied product. That was in 2018. 12K came out in 2019. Continued to grow, moved into new offices, outgrew those offices, moved into newer offices, outgrew those offices. So that is why our facility now is, we're hoping not to have to move for some time to come. We'll see how that goes, especially with the launch of our commercial series. Walt asked, does the 15K have a communication port that speaks to Modbus to implement inverter direct communication? Yes, one of the integrations currently on the market is with Solar Assistant. We have a Modbus port for integrator partners. We have multiple integrator partners who develop Modbus applications to talk with the inverters, more so on the commercial side than the residential. Uh, Energy Toolbase with their Acumen controller would be an example for commercial. But there are some Modbus devices, and if you really want that local monitoring without cloud connection, that's possible with Sol-Ark. Um, look at the product called Solar Assistant for that. So here are our technical support hours, and while I emphasize the staff that you can actually have a conversation and talk to a real person, based in our headquarters, which makes it a lot easier to know what's going on, particularly when you're an installer and you might have multiple sites to manage. I would also emphasize the use of our support ticketing system. You can find that on our website. Just go to solark.com under resources. You can fill out a support ticket. If you go to the contact us page, you can use that contact us form to fill out a support ticket as well. So when the industry surveys most popular inverter products, where Sol-Ark emerges at the top on that list are in areas with bad utility solar policy, at least from the perspective of the customer. We are for example, we are the most popular uh, solar inverter in Tennessee. And the reason is Tennessee never had net metering, or very, very briefly. And now their net metering program is gone. It's been gone for years and years, and was is not very valuable. The utility does not pay a lot of money to sell back to the grid in that region, store that energy in a battery. Sol-Ark has been doing that for years well. Focus on the value of, why are we doing this really? Why are homeowners buying solar battery systems? The answer is to back up their homes with backup power. So that if that is your goal, whether it's on grid or off grid, you will have satisfied customers with Sol-Ark because that is our area of focus. So another key factor is design flexibility or flexible architecture. This is how you wed quality components with low cost. So you can go after low cost by seeking out the very cheapest components, and that will likely not work out for you um, unless you're a do-it-yourselfer, and that project might not be as long-lived as you think. You may want to upgrade, go with the Sol-Ark, and have that system be there for the long haul. For installers, the flexible architecture means you can deliver what the customer needs, and those needs will be changing and evolving over the next few years to come. The reason being 15 kilowatt hours, 20 kilowatt hours, that is not enough battery capacity for what the customer expects whole home backup power to be. 15 kilowatt hours, 20 kilowatt hours, that can get you through a momentary power outage. But when you're talking about what customers need to go through multiple days of backup power, it's not necessarily that they need multiple days worth of batteries, but really you need to store at least half, if not three-quarters, of your daily energy use in a battery in order to get through your sun up to sundown, energy cycle. So when the sun comes up, you don't need your batteries, but a solar array really only produces power for about a third of the day. When you look at our competition with that smaller modular architecture, they lock in the battery and the inverter. And when your battery and inverter are locked together with nothing but one configuration to scale the system up and down, so that you have to grow your inverter capacity with your battery capacity, the net result is an incredibly expensive system when you get into large whole home backup. Conversely, what Sol-Ark enables you to do is scale the battery up without adding additional inverters. And so, particularly when you're looking at whole home backup for customers who want to get through a multi day power outage, that is where Sol-Ark really hits its sweet spot in terms of cost effectiveness. Because when we're talking about 40 or 50 or 60 kilowatt hours of battery storage, that may not be commonplace today, except for your wealthiest of customers. But that is where customers want to be, and battery costs are declining. So the further battery costs drop, the larger the home battery banks will become. And once you get into that, I'd say anything over 20 kilowatt hours, the cost effectiveness of the Sol-Ark platform really starts to edge out the competition without sacrificing things like inverter quality. Now, if you want to do AC coupling, you can. If you have an existing system in place, just AC couple it to the Sol-Ark. You don't need to have a you know cumbersome retrofit experience. So it's very easy to add. If you have a non-backup solar only net metered system, it's very easy to retrofit a Sol-Ark into it. So now you have a battery backup system. Battery agnostic architecture, we're going to talk about that more in a slide or two. But fundamentally, when you're looking at the products that are on the market, you either have the Tesla style architecture where the battery is forced into an inverter form factor, and that locks you in to a coupled power and energy ratio, and that prevents you from having a very large battery bank, which is necessary for long duration power outages. Now, does that mean that the Tesla style architecture is better for small battery banks? Maybe, maybe not. Certainly, just one in-phase battery or one Franklin battery is not enough for home backup power. You need to buy two or three. So, I'm not even sure you could really compare, one Sol-Ark inverter that's 15K to something, substantially smaller than that, that really is not a backup power solution. So just looking at our inverter price point and our inverter price point when combined with our battery partners, this is not project pricing. This is more hardware cost to the installer pricing. Um, when you get into those large battery banks, that is where the Sol-Ark platform, in terms of cost effectiveness, really starts to edge out the competition. Now, we feel we're price competitive with small projects as well, mainly from the simplicity of the design. When you by the time you price in the gateway, the energy panel, additional wiring cost, you might as well have started with the Sol-Ark. In the meantime, with that Sol-Ark, you get 15 kilowatts of solar backup, 12 kilowatts of battery power backup, the 180 amp continuous grid pass through, six solar ports, three full sized MPPTs, the largest battery charger on the market of 275 amps, and a whole lot of additional features that will ensure your project success. Last but not least, the industry partnerships. We are not so large as to be inaccessible to you and your team. Uh, we are right now revising our contractor program for individual certifications as well as tiered company benefits. So please stay tuned for those announcements, which will formally be around the beginning of July. You can, if you've taken our webinar series, you'll be already familiar with some of the philosophies that are going into that. We have online training for your entire team, product training, um, NABCEP training, design training. Really, if you are hiring new hires and they're new to the industry, and you just need to sit them down and run them through a training course, send them to our training portal, because our classes are comprehensive, not just for our product, but also for electrical code and design as well. We have been used by high-end enterprise customers, Costco, NASA, Verizon, and AT&T for their cell phone towers. So, in terms of our commercial product, we are on the market doing 208 volt and 480 volt three-phase backup with inverters that produce that electricity natively without transformers. Another partnership are our battery partners, and this is a little bit of a difficult value. Because if you ask a customer, do you want the inverter and the battery to be the same? They're going to say yes. And if you ask the installer, Do you want the inverter and battery to be the same? They're going to say yes. And to some extent, Sol-Ark would agree with you. We feel that that argument is particularly important for commercial high voltage systems. Commercial because there is more on the line than residential, and high voltage because it is a little bit more dangerous, which is why the NEC more strictly regulates high voltage than lower voltage. And also, one part in a high voltage system can cause a lot more damage than in a low voltage system because there's more series wiring than parallel wiring, so less compartmentalization of components. So for all those reasons, for the commercial market, we streamline with our own batteries and our own inverter. That said, there are legitimate values in having battery partners and being battery agnostic, particularly for residential customers, that are not necessarily apparent at first glance during the installation process at the very least. The first would be battery features. Not all of these batteries on this market, on this list, are uh, outdoor rated. Not all of the batteries on this list have built-in heaters. If you're in, the coast of California, you don't need a heated battery. If you're installing in, uh, you know, Kansas City, and you're putting your batteries in a garage, but your garage is still going to get down to 40, you might want to have a heater in your battery just for longevity. Uh, some jurisdictions force the batteries outside the building, so you need a very rugged outdoor system. Other batteries, like the Briggs and Stratton Simplify battery, are more designed to go into the garage rather than outside the house, and might get you a better price because of that. Stores would be an example of a battery manufacturer that's really focused on warranty. So you can, with the Stores product, you can get a 25-year warranty service, which is more of a end of life warranty for the batteries as they degrade over time. But nonetheless, it's something that is popular within the industry. And then HomeGrid is incredibly easy to install, because they focus on stackability. So whether it's warranty or cost or the indoor versus outdoor, the heated versus non-heated, um, that's going to depend on your region. That's going to depend on your client, and you may decide, this one particular battery option is not for you. With a locked in architecture where you don't have battery choice, you have to throw out the entire, everything but the kitchen sink, if you want to switch from one platform to another. And yet, batteries are going to continue to evolve and change every 6 months from now for the next few years. And so the best way to participate in the emerging feature sets and the emerging uh, lower costs of batteries while still maintaining good quality product selection is to have battery choice, to get to know our battery partners, and pick from our variety of options. And we cover that in our training. Our residential designer certificate pathway has a class called Battery Technologies Compared, where we go into more detail on all those different feature sets. My Sol-Ark is launching at the end of the month. That is when our migration from PowerView is scheduled. This will increase our internet security. It will also enable us to have much more uh, feature development of our monitoring system. So right now, the monitoring system is fairly good, but it is really uh, oriented for the installer and the technician and for the data geek. um, look towards the future with my Sol-Ark to make the platform uh, more consumer friendly for the end user, while still providing robust insight into the individual items within the system, data insight. And ultimately, we are building products to be uh, on site for the duration of their product life. Um, if a component does fail, we are interested in a monitoring system that is a useful tool in helping us identify what went wrong so that we can give you a field serviceable part rather than have you go through the hassle of equipment replacement, which is not always easy to do with electrical devices. From the end user's perspective, it's, can I log into my system and adjust my system settings? Yes, you can. So whether it's the biggest residential products on the market or the proven track record, with the hardware focus, picking the largest and best components, uh, to understanding the customer and having that real US presence to support the installer and the end user when needed, to having a enabling a flexible design architecture that will get you through the project at hand and remain relevant, moving on into the future, no matter what the industry changes bring, as well as a company that you can have a relationship with. Sol-Ark offers all of those things to our partner network. So as far as next steps, if you are not currently a authorized Sol-Ark installer, if you are a designer and you didn't know, you should still fill out this form. If you're a distributor, you want to be a Sol-Ark distributor, just go to our website, fill out the partner with us form. That will make sure that you are set up with our um, CRM and our sales team and our support team in the correct way, so that you can get the best benefits and the best communication. So go to our website, fill out the partner with us form. If you don't know if you're a partner or not, go to the contact us page and send sales a message that says, hey, who's my regional sales manager? I need to confirm that I'm in the system. Do that through the contact us tab. Stay tuned. Explore our training portal. What you see pictured is our commercial product. We have uh, robust commercial options as well, both indoor and outdoor. So indoor, can literally mean inside. It could also mean bring your own battery room. Um, or you can use our outside line, which comes with an air conditioner and a rugged cabinet that could be hoisted or forklift into place. So the success that we've seen over the past, 5 to 6 years in grid-tied residential, we are looking to repeat in commercial with shovel-ready solutions being commissioned on a weekly basis. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go into Q&A. Happy to stick around, but appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you. So David says, what percentage of the USA are you built? Do you qualify for the built-in USA provisions of the IRA? We do not. We have worked with our Chinese OEM partner since the beginning. Um, you don't want to move your product line around willy-nilly because then you lose that quality focus. So we are, not tone deaf to made in USA product um, as a strategy for qualifying projects for the IRA. you could do lead acid. I mean, the fact is with the IRA, you have to have, batteries made in the U.S. You have to have inverters made in the U.S., solar made in the U.S., racking made in the U.S. So at that point, I would say your best bet, David, is probably to stick with AC coupling and have the solar project qualify for the IRA incentives, and then the battery project is not going to qualify for the IRA systems, even if the Sol-Ark converter were made here. So, that is what is exciting about the future, and I think the IRA is an effective policy at um, a longer term transition towards U.S. manufacturing. Uh, you know, Maybe the politicians will force that transition along a little bit faster. We'll see. It is certainly always exciting to be in the solar industry, and come what may. But effectively, we're talking about the difference between a 30% tax credit and a 40% tax credit. And, I really have yet to see commercial projects qualifying for that additional 10%. And I don't think that additional 10% is available for residential customers. I think there's an element of the commercial tax code being slightly more advantageous than the residential tax code with that regard, although I'm not a tax expert on that. So Bill says, how difficult is it to connect larger, so like 200 kilowatt hour battery banks to a set of parallel 15Ks? Your big commercial battery racks look attractive, but I understand they only work with big commercial inverters, the 30K and 60K, and I need 240-volt service. So yeah, Bill, what I would say is Sol-Ark has many sites with very large, and yes, I'm talking about 200 kilowatt hour, 48-volt battery banks. Uh, what you need to do with very large 48-volt battery banks, and many of our battery partners support that. If you need advice on how to find those battery partners, what I would say is look towards battery partners that have server rack style batteries and master BMS units. Because typically, when you're looking at 200 kilowatt hours, you are getting above a little bit above and beyond um, what a single battery BMS is capable of communicating. Um, Fundamentally, when you're doing 200 kilowatt hour batteries, you will need to apply external fuses coming out of the batteries. The reason being is that you're undersizing the fuses rather than oversizing the fuses. So at that point, if you were to do a thorough design and you were to look at the available fault current of lithium iron phosphate batteries, what you would realize is the DC combining of those batteries is going to overwhelm not necessarily the continuous ampacity of the bus bar, but the interrupt rating of the term wire terminals on that bus bar. Um, that interrupt rating, that fault current, is why uh, most battery manufacturers put a fuse, a fast acting fuse, inside their battery BMS so that the fuse blows during a fault. And the same philosophy applies with battery combining. When you need to reduce the fault current, you would undersize the fuses even further. Um, and for batteries, the banks of that large don't use anywhere near their maximum output anyway. And so with large battery banks, the design challenge is uh, you need to have a bus bar, and before you land on the bus bar, you need to fuse the conductors coming out. Generally, um, far less than the output rating of what the battery would otherwise regulate. So looking at our battery partners for those very large 200 kilowatt hour, I would look at Endure. uh, stores, and I'm not sure that home grid goes quite up to 200 kilowatt hour. I know they go up to um, closer to 100 kilowatt hour. Another one is Pites that you may want to look at. Okay, so not too many questions. If you needed to, snag the handout in the handout section. With that, we're going to end mostly on time, and y'all have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Yeah. So David, if you're asking, well, what about the Fortress eVault Max for that large battery bank option? Um, Closed loop communication between Sol-Ark and Fortress batteries still works. So the eFlex, the eVault Max, we're not trying to cut our customers out. We wouldn't do that, to our customers. Um, there's the problem with some of our battery partners is over time, and this is not necessarily the fault of any one company. Anything it can those following the 9540 classes, there is a opposing trend against battery partnerships in general, which I don't think benefits the consumer very well. But nonetheless, um, it takes time and effort to maintain inverter battery partnerships. You can't just integrate and then that's it. And so, when there's more detail with the Fortress battery, um, in that they chose to develop an inverter that on the inside, if you looked at, say, the solar amperage or the battery amperage, is not the same as the Sol-Ark, is smaller than the Sol-Ark. Um, but from the outside, it looks exactly like a Sol-Ark. That's not a good partner. Um, so they're not a Sol-Ark partner, but we still have we still support our CAN bus communication to their battery products. They're not cut out or excluded. That's not the we don't do that at Sol-Ark to our customers. Now, I do think that there was a communication rewiring that was required of Fortress customers when they went over to they their Sol-Ark clone inverter. Um, we can't do anything about that. So, if you have to our goal is to make it sure that you don't have to go out to your inverters and rewire their communication, and you need consistency for that to remain true over the product life from both parties. So, um, stay tuned for July and August. We have uh, a battery partner series scheduled. So we will be bringing through our individual battery partners, and you can hear from their product managers and learn more about their individual companies. Steve says, can you use a 30K for single phase just using two phases and a higher voltage battery? Um, no, it's not something we support. Um, you'll get 20 kilowatts of power. Your phases will be offset by by 60 degrees or 120 degrees, not 180 degrees. So, it's the high voltage batteries are made for three phase out of the box. Um, it really comes down to kilowatt hours. Now, if you're on the fence about your very large residential projects, you're not wrong. to pursue a three-phase design for a residential home if you have that option. You don't always have that option. For that, you're pretty much using the 15K, multiple 15Ks in parallel, and one of our battery partners for that. All right. That said, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you.